Hi, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of STEM Girls Virtual, where we talk about all things in the STEM fields. Those fields, again, are science, technology, engineering, and math. And we are bringing these videos to you so that you can all keep learning at home during this time. Today, we have an awesome guest. Her name is Dr. Lauren Williamson, and she works in the Department of Biological Sciences and Neurosciences at Northern Kentucky University. She's going to talk to us about all the cool stuff that she does in her career. Hi, Dr. Williamson. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Becca.
Thank you. All right, we're going to jump in for some questions. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds great.
Perfect. Let's get started. So the first thing we want to know, can you tell us a little bit more about your job? Kind of explain to us what it is that you do.
Sure. So as a university professor, half of my job is teaching. So I have courses every semester that I teach to different students at the university. So this semester, I have students in Introduction to Biology and students in Introduction to Neuroscience. Other semesters, I've taught anatomy and physiology, so about your body parts and how they work. I've taught neuroanatomy, so all the parts of the brain and how they connect together. And then the other part of my job is doing research. So I run my own lab, and a lot of undergraduate students work with me, and we try to figure out basically the answer to the question, how do our brains and our immune systems talk to each other? And how does that help us remember things, learn new things, grow our brains during early parts of life? So we do all sorts of stuff in the lab, looking at neurons, looking at other types of cells in the brain, and then the different things that they express. So we do science pretty much every day. And then I also teach several days a week at work.
Very interesting. So our next question is, can you tell us what sparked your interest in this field? Was this something that you were always really interested in, or was it something that you grew into?
Right. So I thought brains were pretty cool for a really long time.
They are. They're very cool.
Right? That they don't weigh very much, but they sure do a lot of work, right? And I distinctly remember, I think it was an anatomy book when I was a kid. There was this picture actually of a brain, probably during a craniotomy. Now, most children probably wouldn't say this, but I thought, wow, that wrinkly pink blob is what makes us who we are. And the more I read about it, the more I realized not everybody knew how it worked yet. So I got really excited about that, the brain in general, for a while. And then I worked after college and heard someone give a talk. So she was presenting some research and talked about the idea that the brain and the immune system are always talking to each other, and that we're still trying to figure out how that works. And, about probably 30, maybe 35 years ago, we actually thought the brain didn't have anything to do with the immune system and that they were kind of separate from each other. But now, the more we've done all this research, the more we've realized they're really intertwined. They're really communicating daily, moment to moment. And it got me really excited because I thought, of course, our brains are part of our bodies, and our bodies are changing how our brains work, and our brains are communicating and telling our bodies what to do. Like, it made a lot of sense, and I felt really excited about it.
Yeah, very cool. That's really awesome to just kind of think about that. I don't think that's something that we always think about. Your body is telling your brain, but your brain's telling your body, and it's all a huge system, and it's such a cool, unique, amazing system. I'm sure diving into more research on the brain, I'm sure it would just be fascinating.
It's great.
So our next question is, what is one of the coolest experiences that you have had in your career?
Wow. The very coolest was the first time that I got to hold a human brain.
Oh,
So when I went to graduate school, I went to Duke University, where they have a medical school, and they do autopsies, cadaver labs, essentially, with the medical students. And part of that is having brain samples. So I went with one of my graduate courses, and we got to hold a brain. We had on gloves and all of our protective equipment, but this was someone's brain. And it's kind of fascinating how small it is, how much it's capable of and how small it is.
Yeah.
And Northern Kentucky University actually also has a cadaver program, which is really unusual for undergraduate universities. But
Yeah.
we also have our own collection of human brains and can do things with them, study various things about them, and students can hold them if they want.
That's very cool. And so these bodies, these are individuals who have passed away and they've donated their bodies to science.
Exactly. So they made the decision to help train future physicians, so people who are going to be doctors or even physical therapists, nurses, that they donated their whole body to science. And that helps, students who are headed onto the medical field learn how muscles connect, how your digestive system works when you eat food,
Mhm.
what your brain looks like. So yeah, it's a really valuable resource, and people are very generous with their bodies. And it's a big deal to have undergraduates who are able to work with
Yeah.
these bodies in a way that most undergraduates can't. But also, I mean, most people don't come in contact with this kind of,
Right.
I guess, donation. So
That's very interesting. Thank you very much. So our next question is, what is a challenge you faced on your journey to become who you are today? We know that in all careers and all walks of life, we're all going to meet challenges, and the careers in the STEM fields are no exception to that. So we just wanted to hear about how you overcame a challenge that you encountered. I think the best way for folks to learn how to better handle challenges that come their way are to hear from life experiences from others.
right. Well, so something specific about being in graduate school, and we're all facing this right now in the middle of this completely chaotic time, right? Very new time. So in the middle of graduate school, my advisor had two very large grants. So grants are money from the government that fund science. So taxpayer dollars go to the government, and then the government has something called the National Institutes of Health,
Right.
and you write essentially a proposal that says, this is the research question I want to ask. These are the projects I'd like to do to answer this really important question for health. And would you mind giving me some money? So that's a big program. All scientists who work on biomedical or health related things do this all the time.
Right.
And she had two big grants, and they ended at the same time.
Oh,
So we were in a bit of a funding desert, right? We were out of money. I mean, we had some money. It wasn't as though I had to be laid off from my job as a graduate student, or that I had to completely, quit my PhD, my graduate
mhm,
degree. But I really had to change tactics because we only had money for certain things.
mhm.
So I was working and had been working really hard on some questions, and all of a sudden I had to stop, and I had to make a big pivot, and I had to try something else for a little while we were kind of in limbo. And it was hard because I'd gotten really excited about those questions.
Yeah.
And to leave them behind, I mean, a bit like I've had to do now, right? That with this, all of our social distancing and closing down schools, I am not running my lab right now. And I think there are some parallels there, thinking about how we can use our enthusiasm and excitement to ask something new and move forward. So it took me a little bit, but I learned a lot about some very different questions, and I've actually been able to use them uh, later. So
Mhm.
I learned a bunch of new experiences. So different kinds of animal testing and different kinds of questions about what our brains do when they're exposed to drugs of abuse, which has not been my focus, but was for a little while. And I think it was flexibility, right? That I learned that being flexible and finding a way to be excited about as much of your job as possible was huge. So that
Yeah.
every time a new bump in the road has come, like this really big bump right now, I've thought, okay, how can we be flexible with the enthusiasm I have? And what can we do to stay excited, right? And
Yeah.
it's not easy, but I think it's important to find that little kernel, right, of something we can
Mhm.
be pretty excited about.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice in any situation, whether it's, professional or personal or sometimes things change and you have to be willing to adapt and find new ways to tackle what's happening. And that's no situation proves that more than the one that we're in right now, for sure. But yeah, it's definitely something that you have to be willing to do. You have to be willing to set things aside and regroup and recharge and keep going. So we hope that that inspires everyone that's watching to do the same. Okay, our next question is, what is some advice you'd like to give any young person that's looking to pursue a career in a STEM field?
Okay, I would say my advice is two-pronged, two things.
Okay.
So my first is stay curious. That
Fantastic
if
advice.
your big, if the underlying question all the time is why
Hmm.
is that like that? That's great, right? That if you're not curious about something, maybe it's not for you, but I think if something makes you feel curious, you got to grab on. You got to grab onto it.
Hmm.
And then I think the second one is be a little bit more stubborn than you think is wise. So I know that moms and dads don't love when we are stubborn. But I think if you know that you're on a path to somewhere you want to be, stay on that path, stick with it. Because you know better than anybody, anyone else in the whole world, what's good for you and what's right for you. So I think being a little bit stubborn, not so stubborn that you make people upset, but I think sticking to your guns, I think, is the most important thing in STEM, because a lot of people will try to convince you that you shouldn't. So,
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice, both prongs. Very, very good advice. So we hope that our audience enjoyed that advice as well. So we do have a couple audience questions
great.
that I wanted to ask if you have some time.
Yes.
Fantastic. So the first one is there a reason that we want certain things when we're sick? Um, like, for example, a weird one for me, I crave pancakes, which is not the greatest sick food, but that's what I want every time I'm sick. Is there a reason for that?
There is. So our bodies burn the nutrients that we give them in a particular order, essentially based on how easy it is to burn them up.
Mm-hmm.
So carbohydrates, things like pancakes and cereal and toast and crackers, are really easy for our body to burn up.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't feel good, essentially our entire goal that our brain actually makes our body do is it says, okay, you have a limited amount of energy. I need you to take as much of that energy as possible and work on getting rid of the sickness.
Okay.
And whatever's left over, I need you to do as little as possible with that. So you want to get energy that's easy for you to convert into fuel, right? That you can take that
Right.
fuel and use it as quickly as possible. So that craving for pancakes, so that maple syrup, that sugar on top,
Yeah,
really easy to burn right up.
that makes a lot of sense.
Right. So your body says, please give me the easy things, right? A hamburger when you're sick. No, thank you. Right? It's too much.
Mhm.
It's too hard. And that is entirely why our body is trying to get as much energy out of our food as quickly as possible, because we gotta really shift our plans and get
Yeah,
rid of the thing making us sick.
that is super interesting. Thank you. Now
You're
all my questions are answered. I wonder that every time I don't feel good. Really, Becca? Pancakes is what you want?
yeah.
And I
No,
have
but
an
your body
internal
knows.
dialogue with myself about how I'm going crazy. So,
No, your body knows. It says, look, I can turn those pancakes into important fuel as quickly as possible, especially if she drowns them in maple syrup. Perfect. We're ready.
oh boy, that's very interesting. Thank you. That answers so many questions. Um, so another question we have is, what is one thing we can all do to combat feeling any kind of way, like crummy or tired. A lot of us are having, issues with that, especially right now. We're out of our routines. Some of us are feeling overwhelmed or anxious. What are some ways that we can really combat those feelings right now? Because that's not what anybody needs in this current situation.
Right. Well, so, right, we're out of some routines. I think having a routine is good and important.
Hmm.
That our immune system and our brain, we're really good at having a schedule,
Hmm.
and that we have daily rhythms inside our bodies that are really important to kind of keep up. Some of that is, do you need to wake up at the same time every day, even if it's a little later than you might during, normal business hours? Do you need to set an alarm so you don't sleep till 4 p.m.?
Right.
Right? Some people are nocturnal, but most of us like to be up during the day when the sun is sometimes shining, right? And that helps, I think, manage some of our hormones and some of our immune signals that are really sensitive to time of day. So one, have a routine, even if it's just a tiny baby routine, like try to go to bed at the same time, try to get up
Hmm.
at the same time. Even if nothing else is the same in the middle, having those bookends are really important. I think the other, which a bunch of different websites and people in the world have said, move, get up and move. That
Yeah.
moving our body makes our brain feel better, right? That, there's ways to release all these sort of soothing chemicals in our bodies by just moving our muscles. And it doesn't need to be strenuous, and you don't have to get, completely out of breath. But I think we're all, I know I am. I find myself sitting for many more hours a day than I used to. And
Yeah.
part of that is because my commute is a lot shorter, that I only have to go downstairs. I don't have to go to my car, walk into the office, even just simple things like that. But so I would say those two things more important than anything else and those help your immune system too. That your immune system that keeps you healthy and is always making sure all the bad stuff is out, sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not, but giving it as much routine and as much positive input as possible. So I would say those two are your best bets.
Perfect. Thank you. And then our final question for today. When we feel these things, should we recognize and work against them? Or is this what our body is saying it wants and needs? So, on one hand, if my body is saying it wants and needs, uh, you know, a long nap in the middle of the day, is that something that we should be allowing it to happen? Or is that something we need to say, no, it's my rhythm is thrown off and I need to fight against that to get my body back to where it needs to be. There's a lot of talk right now, and a lot of it's great. Don't feel bad about yourself if you are feeling anxious or if you're feeling stressed or scared or tired or any of these things. But are there steps that we can do to help us remain as healthy as possible?
Right. Well, so I'll say this in two ways. When you're sick with anything, right?
Mhm.
I know we're worried about getting sick right now, but we've all had a cold in the last year, right? We've all
Right.
had the sniffles. Ugh, it's the worst. Having a cold is the
Worst.
worst. It's
It is
just
the
so
worst.
terrible, right? But when you have a cold, you get tired. You don't want to eat anything but pancakes. You don't want to go out and see people. Taking a bath is exhausting, right? You just want to lie down.
Mhm.
That is for sure your brain saying, please take whatever energy you have and work towards fighting what's making you sick, the cold.
Mhm.
So in that case, yes, listen to your body. That don't fight against it, and don't take too much Dayquil or acetaminophen or whatever it is
Mhm.
you want to take, because you're just stopping your immune system from doing what it needs to do. On the other hand, right, that anxiety and depression we think are really related to how the immune system and the brain talk to each other. The
Mhm.
inflammation is directly related to depressive symptoms. So I would say this: if you have managed to make yourself a routine, going to bed around the same time, getting up around the same time most days. And around 2 o'clock, your body says, I'm going to need a nap. I need it. I have to go to bed right now. Do it. I would say go right ahead. I would say go right ahead, because if you wake up in an hour or 20 minutes feeling more refreshed and as though you can tackle what's left of your day,
right,
what's the harm? To be honest, the midday nap is a common thing in many parts of the world. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I particularly appreciate a middle afternoon little nap. But I think you have to have established a routine first, right? That if we take naps and then we stay up all night and then we get up at noon and then we want to take a nap at 4, right? That having no schedule is only going to make it worse. Because our bodies get totally out of whack. We need rhythm.
Yeah,
right?
and having that schedule is so hard right now.
It really is. It really is. And I think we have to try our very best. And some of it is notice that the earth has a rhythm, right? That the sun comes up and our days are getting longer right now, that the sun comes up earlier and earlier, but the sun comes up every morning and it goes down every night. And, the creatures come out and they feed and then they go back to bed, and the nocturnal creatures come out, that everything has a rhythm that I know we have lost our work rhythms, but we still have a rhythm. We're animals who live on this planet, and we gotta stick with the rhythm. I think that's the best advice I would offer, is that the more rhythm you can put in your life, even if it is artificial, right? That you don't have anywhere to be at 9 a.m. every single day.
Yeah.
Means that it's a little easier to get through every day. So, yeah, I mean, I found when I first started this, I definitely didn't give myself a rhythm. I thought, it was spring break at Northern Kentucky. So I was like, I'm on vacation. And now I'm on an extra week of vacation. And so, my rhythm was very skewed. And I found I was having a really hard time. I mean, getting things done, staying organized, sleeping. And then when I said, I'm setting an alarm, it got a lot easier. So
that's amazing advice. Thank you. I think that's all advice that we can all use right now. I know that myself, even I'm having to set some schedules for myself to try to keep everything moving along. So thank you. That's fantastic advice. We really appreciate it. That is all we have for today. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us and sharing everything you know about the brain. It's fascinating, and I really hope that it has encouraged some of our viewers to delve into the world of brain science some more. Dr. Williamson, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Becca.
And we hope that everyone will keep learning with us. Stay tuned for more updates about more interviews and more things that the Cincinnati Museum Center is doing to help keeping you learning and educated and having fun during this time. We've got art projects, we've got science projects, we've even got some dance parties. So stay tuned for more. Keep checking us out on social media and keep learning, Cincinnati. Bye.